Tonight I'm going to talk about flams and grace note consistency. A flam, of course, consists of a main note, typically played at a accented height. So tonight I'll be playing it at a full stroke, up to vertical, and a grace note, which is typically played at 3 inches or less. The flam is not really that defined rhythmically. The grace note is just said to be played before the main note. Doesn't say how far before. In order to get a nice clean sound throughout a snare line, typically the grace note is played as close to the main note as possible without playing it at the same time. So tonight we're going to sort of play around with that grace note placement and make sure that we have a conscious control over the space between the grace note and the main note. So what I want to do first is just play some alternating flams, play a right flam, a left flam, right flam, left flam. And we're going to start out with a fairly loose interpretation of a flam. So we're going to put a little extra space between the grace note and the main note. Another thing I want you guys to try, a lot of you probably have pads that have different surfaces. So this Zymox pad has a nice soft surface in the center. The surrounding surface is quite hard. You get a very articulate sound. The other side of my pad is a little bit sort of in between. So I want to use the hardest surface possible. Even if you have like a piece of plywood or something that has a really short, articulate sound, that's ideal. When you're dealing with very small spaces between notes, the shorter the sound, the more apparent it's going to be if we have any sort of error or variation in that spacing. So I mean, you could play here and it might sound great, but it's sort of like ignorance is bliss. You can't hear your errors, they're not as apparent. So let's start out by playing 8 alternating flams with loose grace notes. And I'll attempt to make the spacing consistent. We'll see how I do here. Okay, that was alright. I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to play 8 more flams, this time with a very tight grace note interpretation, hopefully. So could you hear the change from the first 8 to the second 8? I'm going to continue building up here. This time I'm going to follow it up with 8 flams where the grace note is played exactly with the main note. So that's sometimes called a popped flam or like a double stop flam. See how this goes. Oh, that was too tight. Yeah, like those last 3 flams that I was trying to pop, they actually had grace notes, so it takes a lot of control. This is a very good exercise. Finally, the last 8 flams we're going to play will be mouths, or backwards flams, where you actually play the grace note after the main note. So a mouth is just in slow motion, like this. They sound kind of funky, but they're fun to play. So 8 alternating mouths would sound like... So the whole exercise would be those 4 variations, so give it a go here. Yeah, so this is I think it's a pretty challenging exercise. It seems like it might be basic, but it really takes a lot of concentration and a lot of practice to really get good consistency. Right now we're just doing alternating flams. We can build upon this idea and do other flam rudiments. So I will attempt to demonstrate this with flam accents, just triplets with flams on every beat. So we'll start out with the loose grace notes, tight grace notes, pop flams, and mouths.